Hello everyone! It's time to talk about the books that I read in February. The first book that I completed was another short book from my own shelves, and that was The Selected Poems of Emily Dickinson. This is one that I bought fairly recently because it was very beautiful and I had a gift card to spend. I'd read a little bit of her poetry before in college, but not a whole lot of it, and after reading this, I guess it's not really my thing. I enjoyed several of the poems, but overall, it just wasn't really my ideal reading experience. I will probably hold on to this edition for a while because I just don't own very much poetry, and it's still really beautiful and really doesn't take up much space. I rated it 3 stars out of 5. The next book that I read was The Financial Diet by Chelsea Fagan. This is the book companion, I suppose, to the Financial Diet YouTube channel, which I've been watching since it began, and it's been really interesting. And the book really did repeat a lot of what they have already talked about on the channel, so it didn't really present any new information or strategies, but it did give me an introduction to the Walks of Life website, which has tons of delicious and easy looking Asian recipes. I also just enjoyed the visual aspects of the book, which is done by Lauren Verhaeg, who is the designer for The Financial Diet. I gave this one 4 stars. After that, I read Saga Volume 8, which arrived for me at the library as a new arrival, and of course I'm sure I read it in one sitting and I rated it 5 stars. This is the only comic or graphic novel that I read in February because I read enough other books that I've been keeping up with my reading goal pretty well and haven't needed to read graphic novels from the library, but I still do want to read more throughout the year. The next book that I read is Strong is the New Pretty. This is by Kate T. Parker, and a customer at work recommended this one to me and just couldn't stop raving about it. So I decided to give it a read, and it went very quickly because it's mostly just pictures, basically, of girls being girls and living their lives, whether that's sporty or messy or confident or silly, whatever it is. So it is a really beautiful book, but the main issue I had with it was that you only get like one quote from maybe every girl or every other girl, rather than a little more explanation about who they are and what they want to do with their lives. Instead, the quotes just feel a little bit more detached and distant. But overall, I still really enjoyed it, and I rated it 4 stars. The next book that I finished was The Snow Child, which was a reread for me. I think I started it before February when it was still more snowy, and I finished it when all the snow had melted. But this is definitely one of my absolute favorite books, and I just really had a craving to read this again when the snow started falling. So naturally, I rated this one 5 stars because I do absolutely love it. And the next book that I finished was I Am Malala. This was the ebook that I had been working on since November, and I did really enjoy it, and I ended up rating it 5 stars. I did feel like some parts of the book got a little bogged down by facts and history and got a little more distant from Malala's personal life, but of course her experiences are very tied into the history and politics of Pakistan. I really loved her story, and I also really loved her relationship with her father and how much her father loves her and supports her and roots for her being whoever she dreams to be. And after that, I finally got back into reading more short books from my shelves, and it wasn't a big goal for me in February because the first book I completed in February finished my February goal, but I did decide to continue on even though I was already ahead. So I picked up Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and this wasn't exactly next on the list, but I wanted to read this one and one other book that I'll talk about because it was Black History Month in February. And I had owned this one for a while but hadn't really realized the importance of this book to African literature and Nigerian literature. So I really enjoyed getting to learn more about the Igbo culture in Nigeria, but aside from that, I didn't really love the book. It felt most of the time like I was reading a folk tale, and there wasn't really much beauty to the writing itself. It felt pretty straightforward. So although I am definitely glad that I read it, I rated it only 3 stars. So that other book that I mentioned that I picked up was The Color Purple by Alice Walker. And I had never read this before, never seen the movie or anything, and didn't really know much about the plot going into it. So I ended up absolutely loving this book. I thought it was so well done, and I just really enjoyed the unique voice, which was so strong from the very first page. And this is a book told in letters, and I thought it was really interesting that most of the letters don't actually end up getting read by anyone, or at least not read when they're supposed to be read. And I really thought that was an interesting twist to the idea of an epistolary novel. I definitely want to see the movie now with Oprah and Whoopi Goldberg. I don't think I'll be keeping this copy because it's pretty beat up and just not that appealing visually, but I would like to acquire a better copy for my own shelves on a more permanent basis. I rated this 5 stars on Goodreads, but 5 stars at the time just really did not feel like enough, and I said I would rate it 10 stars if I could. When I was reading this, I found it was really interesting because it had a bit of a connection to Things Fall Apart, which takes place just before the missionaries come to Nigeria, and in this book the main character's sister travels as an African-American missionary to Africa. And I had also started reading a book that I'm still reading right now, Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and that is also a Nigerian book, and I didn't even realize that Chimamanda was also Igbo. I knew she was Nigerian, but hadn't realized she was Igbo until I saw the quote right on the cover of the book. So I will talk more about Purple Hibiscus in my March reading wrap-up since I'm still reading that one, but it's been a really interesting experience to read these 3 books, and more it seems like I'm noticing how many Igbo or Nigerian works of literature there are. So the next book that I read after that was one I've been borrowing for a while and is on the larger side, and that is The Outlandish Companion Volume 1. And this one I of course borrowed from my mother, who is the one who got me into the Outlander series, and this one covers the first 4 books. And it was really interesting because parts of it were written back in like 1999 and parts of it were written in 2013 or 2015 or so when production on the new TV show was happening. So you get Diana talking about her experience on CompuServe and the forums on there when she was writing her first book, also about her plans for the future novels, and she mentions different plans at different points in the book, like she didn't actually go through and update every section. So at one point she thinks there will be 4 books, and then at another point of the book she says there will be 6, and then later in the book she mentions Written in My Own Heart's Blood, which is I think the 8th book. But overall I enjoyed it, and there was a lot of interesting little tidbits that I learned, though I did definitely skip some sections like the glossaries and the index of every character ever, and the astrological portion where one of her fans does an astrological reading of the main characters. But if you are a really big Outlander fan and haven't read The Outlandish Companion, I think it's definitely worth checking out. I rated it 4 stars. And the last book that I finished in February was The Secret History of Twin Peaks. This one I actually checked out from the library as an audiobook, or rather book on CD, and I wanted to do that because it's a full cast recording and figured that that would make it easier to listen to and an enjoyable experience since I love the TV show. And I was actually able to pay attention pretty well to the audiobook, even though usually they are more difficult for me to focus on. But I think because of my interest in the TV show and the quality of the narration, I was able to get through it and I really enjoyed it. I definitely want to read the sequel because that goes even more in depth to what is going on between the original season and this return, but I don't plan on getting to that one right away, but still definitely glad that I read it because I have really been enjoying Twin Peaks and I have seen the return season now and for the most part really enjoyed it. And if you watch Twin Peaks, let me know your thoughts down below. So in total, I read 10 books and 3 of them were short books from my own shelves. And that put me at halfway done with March's reading goal. So I'm actually going to use the opportunity of being so far ahead to read the 9th book in the Wheel of Time series, which is 760 pages. I hope everyone out there had a good reading month in February, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!